Are you addicted to likes, comments, and other people's approval? This desperate search for validation is destroying your peace of mind and turning you into a slave to others' opinions. 2,000 years ago, at the height of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, but his real battle was against this same sick need for approval. He developed 9 Stoic methods that can literally kill your emotional dependency and transform you into someone genuinely confident. These ancient principles are so powerful that they will completely reprogram how you see yourself and others, freeing you from this mental prison in a matter of days. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment which part of the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. How much time do you spend thinking about what others think of you? Maybe you have noticed that feeling when you post something online and keep checking to see how many people liked it. Or you might have felt upset if your comment in a group chat didn't get any replies. Most of us have been there, caught in the cycle of seeking validation from others, especially now when almost everything happens online. It sounds like a small thing, but this habit can have a huge impact, and not always a positive one. What's going on beneath the surface, and why does giving so much power to others' opinions feel so hard to break? The world today is more connected than it has ever been. With just a smartphone, you can talk to friends on the other side of the globe, share a thought with everyone you know, or post a photo for hundreds or even thousands of people to see. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook are built around short bursts of feedback. Every time you upload a picture, share a meme, or comment on something, there's a chance to earn a heart, a like, or a thumbs up. Those little notifications give your brain a quick jolt of pleasure. This feedback loop is designed to keep you coming back for more, always hungry for the next sign that someone has seen and liked what you shared. The result is a new kind of addiction. People start to crave these signs of approval the same way they might crave a sweet snack. It goes beyond just enjoying a compliment. It becomes a need. When those notifications stop coming, or if a post has fewer likes than expected, some people start feeling anxious, disappointed, or even rejected. Even worse, if someone leaves a negative comment or ignores you altogether, it can feel like a personal insult. What makes this cycle so dangerous is that many people do not even realize it is happening. It becomes such a natural part of daily life that we forget it wasn't always this way. Now, here's something important to understand. Chasing this kind of attention is not a new thing. The desire for social approval has always been part of human nature. We're wired to want to be accepted by others. In the past, it might have been about getting a nod of approval from your neighbor or a compliment from a member of your family, but today this has been amplified by technology. Instead of a handful of people whose opinions matter, you are now surrounded every hour of every day by a crowd of digital voices, most of them strangers, weighing in on everything you do or say. That means the number of people who can influence your self-esteem has skyrocketed. This has real consequences. The constant need for validation might at first seem harmless, but over time, it can seriously damage your sense of self-worth. Imagine starting to judge yourself based on whether or not your latest post did well, or feeling pressure to always share highlights instead of being yourself. The anxiety kicks in, and your mind gets filled with doubts. Am I doing enough? Did I say the wrong thing? Why is everyone else doing better? At its worst, this leads to what psychologists call contingent self-esteem, meaning your confidence starts to depend on how others react instead of how you truly feel about yourself. Marcus Aurelius warned about this very thing almost 2,000 years ago. While he never dealt with social media, he lived in a world full of expectations and opinions. As emperor, he knew more than anyone what it was like to live under the constant gaze of others. His advice, passed down through his writings, cautioned people not to let outside opinions take over their minds. He pointed out how the need to please everyone is not just exhausting, it is impossible. His message was clear: you cannot control what others think, and letting their opinions rule your mind lets them steal your peace. One reason the search for validation is so toxic, especially now, is that it convinces you that your worth is something outside yourself, always just out of reach. If you got 50 likes today, maybe tomorrow you start hoping for 100. If your group chat laughed at your joke this time, you start worrying about how to make the next one just as funny. The bar keeps rising, and true satisfaction slips further away. People start changing how they talk, what they share, and even how they look, all to please an invisible audience. The more you seek approval, the harder it is to feel calm and secure inside your own mind. The cycle can also trick you with phantom rewards. That quick hit of satisfaction from a new comment or like fades after a few seconds, leaving you hungry for more. Over time, your brain becomes wired to expect constant positive feedback and less able to handle criticism or indifference. This breaks down your resilience. Instead of learning to recover from disappointment, you might find yourself obsessing about ways to avoid judgment, or even withdrawing from sharing at all if the response wasn't as warm as you hoped. The anxiety resulting from all of this is real and growing. More people than ever, especially teens and young adults, report feeling lonely, insecure, or anxious despite having hundreds of digital friends. These feelings often come back to the search for validation. It's as if you put your happiness in a box, handed it over to someone else, and now need their permission to get it back. The cost is high: lost energy, lost time, and sometimes even lost opportunities to form genuine connection because you are too busy worrying about the next wave of digital applause. What makes the modern version of this cycle so tricky is how invisible it can be. Algorithms on social media are not just showing you things you like. They track what you respond to, note what grabs your attention, and feed you more of the same so you keep scrolling. If you seemed happy about a post that got a lot of likes, the system might show it to more people, making the stakes feel higher each time you share something new. This system keeps you comparing yourself, always checking to see if you measure up, instead of enjoying real moments or expressing yourself honestly. The cycle also impacts the way people see themselves offline. When so much time is spent trying to shape an online identity, it's easy to lose touch with who you really are. You might begin to second-guess yourself in everyday situations, wondering how others would judge your choices. The idea that your value depends on how clever, attractive, or funny you appear to distant viewers makes it hard to relax and be authentic. Instead of feeling rooted in your own values and actions, you become stuck in a loop of needing to prove yourself to others over and over again. What can make things even worse is the way people blend their self-image with their digital presence. When something goes well online, it feels like a victory. When a post gets ignored or criticized, it feels like a personal failure. This confusion makes it hard to separate what is actually happening in your life from what's happening in your digital feed, and soon the emotions spill into real interactions. It's not just a teenager worried about their viral status. Adults and even older people are affected too. The cycle does not discriminate by age or background. Anyone can get caught in its grip. Another complication is that most online approval is extremely shallow. A heart or a like takes only a second and might not even mean the person noticed or cared about what you shared. But our brains struggle to tell the difference. We get used to counting every little reaction, even if it comes from someone we barely know or from a stranger halfway around the world. That means our moods and feelings are now tied more than ever to opinions that have nothing to do with our actual lives, dreams, or goals. This kind of emotional roller coaster is exhausting. One truth people often overlook is how much this cycle shrinks your attention span. When you're always waiting for a response or thinking about what to post next, it distracts from your real priorities. Homework, work projects, and even personal hobbies can start to feel less important when compared to chasing those digital dopamine hits. This distraction leads to stress, and, over time, the pressure to keep up can make you feel burned out. Instead of feeling free and independent, life turns into a race to earn approval you might never receive. Culturally, some people push back and say, "This is just the way things are now." Everyone does it, some might claim, but there is another way. Step 1 is really understanding how this cycle works so you can take back control. The people who notice the pattern, who step back and ask themselves why they care about what others think, are the ones best prepared to break free from the need for outside validation. Recognizing the problem does not make you weak. It means you are paying attention and willing to focus on what matters. Breaking this habit is not about ignoring everyone or turning yourself into a hermit. Human beings are social. We need real connection, care, and respect. But there's a big difference between building genuine relationships and letting hundreds of strangers decide what you're worth. It is about balance. Learning to care about what the right people in your life truly think, and not letting faceless opinions dictate your happiness. Real progress happens when you start to notice how you feel before and after sharing online or getting feedback. If you find yourself checking your phone often or feeling upset by what others say, that's a sign to pause. Ask yourself, whose opinion actually matters to you? Who do you really trust and respect? Are you acting from your own values or just trying to fit into an endless popularity contest? These questions help you to step back, reflect, and eventually choose a healthier way forward. It's also important to remember how quickly digital approval fades. Yesterday's viral moment is forgotten today, and tomorrow there will be something else. Trying to keep up is like running on a treadmill that never stops. The faster you run, the less progress you make toward real peace of mind. Understanding this truth is what Marcus Aurelius talked about when he warned against allowing others to control your happiness. If someone from ancient Rome could see through the illusion of outside approval, it's definitely possible in the 21st century. In the end, technology is just a tool. It is neither good nor bad by itself. What matters is how you use it and whether you allow it to control your sense of self-worth. Recognizing the toxic cycle of seeking validation is the first crucial step. Once you're aware of how easily you can get pulled in, you can start to act differently. Whether that means cutting back on social media, sharing more authentically, or simply deciding to value your own opinion, each small action puts more power back in your hands. The real secret is that you don't need a constant stream of digital applause to feel valuable. True self-worth comes from something much bigger: your choices, your efforts, and your character. No number of likes, shares, or comments will ever add up to the kind of confidence that grows when you stop chasing pointless approval and focus on what really matters. When you see this clearly, you become stronger, calmer, and much harder to shake. It takes effort, but every one of us is capable of breaking free from the toxic loop and reclaiming the peace that comes with knowing who we are. Do you ever wonder how someone can stay calm even when everyone is looking at them or judging their choices? Imagine being in charge of an entire empire with millions of people watching your every move, waiting to approve or criticize. That's not a situation most of us will experience, but it's exactly where Marcus Aurelius found himself. Even though he ruled ancient Rome as emperor, he faced a lot of the same inner doubts and worries that people face today. You might think that having that kind of power would make someone confident all the time, but Marcus Aurelius actually spent a lot of time thinking quietly about self-worth, approval, and what really makes a person valuable from the inside out. One thing that makes Marcus Aurelius interesting is how honestly he wrote about himself. His most famous book, often called Meditations, was actually a private journal, not meant to be shared. He wrote down his thoughts at all hours, using these pages to sort out his struggles with worry, frustration, pride, and the stress that comes from ruling such a large empire. He never tried to sound perfect. Instead, he admitted where he felt weak and where he knew he needed to get stronger. This openness makes his words feel real and useful, even hundreds of years later, because he was always searching for the best way to live without getting trapped by the opinions of others. For Marcus, self-worth wasn't something you could collect from other people. He realized that the praise or criticism you get from the crowd can be random and unpredictable. Sometimes people cheer for the wrong reasons or ignore you when you deserve attention. If your confidence rises or falls based on what's happening outside, especially what other people are saying, then you lose control over your own mind. Marcus tried to anchor himself by asking simple questions. What do I know for sure about myself? What matters most to me? Am I behaving in a way that feels honest and good, regardless of whether anyone notices? If he could answer these questions honestly, he knew he could trust himself. The Stoic philosophy Marcus followed focuses on a few basic ideas. First, the Stoics believed that the only thing you really control is your own response to the world. You can't force others to agree with you. You can't guarantee victory or applause, no matter how hard you try. But you do have full command over your attitude, your choices, and your intentions. Marcus kept coming back to this idea in his writings. He would remind himself that what other people choose to say or do belongs to them, not to him. When someone insulted him or tried to flatter him with empty words, Marcus told himself not to let it shape his mood or self-view. Following this approach, Marcus Aurelius worked on building what's known as intrinsic self-worth. Basically, this means the sense of worth that comes from inside, not from anyone else. He paid more attention to his own behavior, how much effort he put in, whether he acted honestly, if he tried hard to learn from mistakes, than whatever random person happened to comment on his decisions. To be clear, Marcus listened to advice when it made sense, and he learned from criticism if it was reasonable, but he didn't let the crowd's opinions change who he was at his core. He tried to measure himself against his own standards. So, how did he actually do this? Day after day, while running an enormous empire, Marcus developed a mix of habits that grounded him no matter what storms came his way. He wrote down his thoughts every morning and evening. He made lists of what he wanted to focus on, qualities like patience, courage, and fairness. When things got tough or he faced an insult, he'd take a few moments to get calm and remind himself what he was working toward. Instead of getting swept up in praise, he recognized that even the loudest applause is temporary. Instead of getting crushed by criticism, he asked whether there was anything useful to learn, and then he moved on. Marcus Aurelius's view on self-worth also involved stepping back to look at the bigger picture. He reminded himself how small and brief each human life really is, even for a Roman emperor. In his meditations, he wrote about how everything changes quickly, public opinion one day, gone the next, careers and popularity rising and falling. He often reflected on how one day everyone he knew, and even himself, would be forgotten. This isn't meant to sound negative. For Marcus, it was a way to keep things real. When he saw that nothing outside of himself was truly lasting, he focused even more on what he could control, his own mind, actions, and values. It's important to know that Stoicism in general, and for Marcus personally, did not mean pretending that feelings don't matter. Marcus was fully aware of his emotions. He wrote about anger, sadness, and pressure. But instead of letting those feelings run the show, Marcus practiced paying attention to them, learning from them, and then deciding the best response. When he felt angry over an insult, he would pause and figure out if it was worth holding on to that feeling. If he felt proud after a success, he'd enjoy it for a moment, but not let it carry him away. This habit of pausing and reflecting helps explain why Marcus didn't let outside opinions take too much space in his mind. When you look at the way Marcus Aurelius describes self-worth, you notice he never talks about being better than others, having more money, or seeking out group approval. For him, it's about living up to his own ideals and self-discipline. He worked to be helpful, brave, and reasonable because it meant something to him, whether or not other people happened to notice or appreciate it. This is very clear when you read his words. He is not writing for an audience, but simply trying to keep himself honest. That is a rare thing, not just in history, but today as well. One of the strengths of the Stoic method is that it's practical. For Marcus Aurelius, this meant asking himself, almost daily, if he was living according to the virtues he valued most. He kept testing his priorities, making sure nothing unimportant became too powerful in his life. If he found himself tempted to brag or act in anger, he'd pause and try to figure out what was really going on. Was he acting from pride, fear, or the urge to get approval? If the answer was yes, he would try to refocus on things he could be proud of that didn't depend on anyone else noticing. A lot of Marcus's advice translates easily into modern life, even if our world looks very different from ancient Rome. People today face many sources of pressure, whether it's at work, in school, or online. The temptation to edit your life so people will like you, or to hold back when you're scared of being seen as odd, is everywhere. Watching Marcus Aurelius manage these kinds of pressures at the highest level is encouraging. He didn't have access to therapy apps or self-help books. Instead, he relied on simple habits: journaling, self-questioning, and keeping his focus on what was really important to him. These tools are available to anyone, anywhere, with only a notebook and some quiet time. One lesson that stands out from Marcus's life is the power of consistency. Instead of lurching from one emotion to another based on random events or feedback, he kept studying himself over years and years. He didn't expect to get everything right. There were setbacks, tough days, and hard lessons. Yet, by checking in with himself regularly, he learned to trust his own judgment bit by bit. Over the decades, that kind of steady effort adds up. You can feel it in his writing. He sounds sturdy, peaceful, and clear-headed, even when the world around him was full of chaos. For Marcus, relationships and social life definitely mattered. In fact, they were central to his duties as a leader. He valued friendship, loyalty, and good advice, but he drew a big line between honest relationships and the empty chase for status or popularity. He saw that it was possible to get along with others, to be caring and just, without letting their approval run your life. When he needed to understand someone else's criticism or advice, he tried to judge if it was honest and thoughtful, rather than just a knee-jerk opinion or a crowd reaction. In this way, he stayed open to learning without being a prisoner to gossip. Another layer to Marcus's thinking is how he handles moments of success or recognition. Instead of basking in attention, he saw praise as something separate from his actual work or value. He realized that compliments, rewards, and applause could be enjoyable, but they are also out of your control, no matter how well you perform. He wanted to avoid letting positive feedback make him lazy or complacent. The end goal wasn't to win everyone's praise, it was to do the best job with what he had, regardless of outside rewards. This independence from outside feedback made him more resilient when things went wrong. If you know your worth comes from how you acted and what you tried to do, it doesn't sting as much when other people don't get it. Marcus taught himself to see mistakes as part of learning. When others misunderstood him or questioned his choices, he looked for whatever truth might be in their arguments, then left the rest behind. He didn't ignore good advice, but he didn't panic over misunderstandings or keep chasing after doubters just to change their minds. Letting go of the need for validation isn't something you finish in a weekend. Marcus Aurelius shows that it's a slow, ongoing process. He kept returning to the same reminders. Don't sweat the crowd, stay true to your higher goals, check your own intentions over and over again. In the long run, the reward isn't just more peace of mind, but also a stronger sense of focus. You have more control over your own direction in life, and surprises or setbacks don't shake you as much. For anyone feeling overwhelmed by opinions on social media, at work, or among friends, Marcus's approach is a reminder that no one else can give you lasting confidence. That comes from how honestly you look at yourself, how closely your actions match your values, and whether you can face mistakes without running away. These are skills anyone can develop, not just emperors or superachievers. What helps is finding a few quiet minutes every day to get real about what's going on in your mind, and not letting outside noise drown out your inner voice. Another interesting point is the Stoic idea that what matters most is character. For Marcus, the kind of person you are is your main achievement, not your job, reputation, or possessions. He cared about being fair, thoughtful, brave, and steady. If he managed to act in those ways, even when tired or frustrated, that was enough to feel proud. He wasn't against celebration, but he didn't build his identity on having a good reputation. He wrote that time would erase everyone's achievements anyway, so what lasts is the kind of person you become. Because Marcus was an emperor, he dealt with constant challenges, political plots, wars, disease, and pressure from powerful people. Despite that, the words he left behind are calm and stable. He wished to remind himself that how he treated others and the effort he put into each day meant more than public praise. That's not just a lesson for people in power. Anyone with a job, a family, or any responsibility can relate. Every time you choose to focus on what you can control, rather than chasing after random approval, you build the kind of confidence that isn't so easy to break. Whenever he was discouraged, Marcus would often write that the best path was to return to simple actions and do them as well as he could. That could mean being honest in a tough situation, helping someone in need, or being patient when things took a wrong turn. None of these depend on what others think. By repeating these small positive choices, he built up a habit of self-worth that stayed strong even in hard times. Over time, he needed outside validation less and less because he trusted his own efforts. For people trying to use these ideas today, you can see why a private journal was so important to Marcus. Writing things down helps you catch the stories in your own mind, both the helpful ones and the ones that trip you up. When you put thoughts on paper, you get a bit of distance from them and can judge them more clearly. Marcus was doing the ancient version of what many people call journaling today. Even spending a few minutes most days checking in with yourself can lower stress, build confidence, and help you let go of the urge to please everyone. There's a quiet power to the way Marcus Aurelius lived and thought. Instead of acting for applause, he focused on being useful and fair. He worked hard to be the best leader he could be without letting praise or criticism change his path. If weighing every decision by outside approval didn't work for the Emperor of Rome, it's unlikely to bring satisfaction to the rest of us. Instead, the Stoic way Marcus practiced asks you to notice when you're pulled by others' opinions. Pause and think carefully about your next step. By keeping your actions rooted in your own values, listening to fair criticism, accepting praise but not chasing it, and checking in with yourself regularly, you build a much stronger sense of self-worth. You stop riding the emotional roller coaster that comes from counting likes, praise, or outside compliments. Each day you get a chance to act with intention, learn from what happens, and move forward. That's how Marcus Aurelius lived. The result was not only a life of achievement, but one of quiet confidence you can sense in his words, even thousands of years later. Even when you get used to trusting your own values and keeping your standards steady, there are moments when other people's opinions sneak up and start to bother you. Sometimes, just one comment can stick with you for hours or days, even if deep down you know it shouldn't matter so much. Marcus Aurelius came up with a way to make these outside judgments lose their power over you, and it's something you can use right in the middle of a busy day. He often reminded himself about how quickly other people's thoughts come and go. The praise, criticism, or even anger people show today can all disappear by tomorrow, and most of the time, no one will even remember what was said. When you pay attention to how short-lived most opinions are, it gets easier not to take them so seriously. This might sound simple, but it takes some practice to really see other people's reactions as temporary. You might get a rush of happiness from a compliment or feel annoyed by an insult, but if you wait a while, those feelings usually fade away. Most of the time, the person who said something nice or mean is moving on with their own life and might not even remember what they said 10 minutes later. People are distracted and focused on their own problems, so their attention is rarely fixed on you for long. Marcus put a lot of effort into remembering this. Anytime someone tried to flatter him or tear him down, he reminded himself that none of this would matter in a week, a month, or a year. It helps to look at the way daily conversations, whether online or in person, work. For example, someone might scroll by your post, give it a like, comment something without thinking too much, and just carry on with their day. That moment might mean a lot to you, but to them, it could be just another quick interaction. When criticism shows up, the same thing happens. Someone might have had a bad day, responded to you with a negative comment, and then forgotten about the whole thing an hour later. Yet, it's easy for that negative reaction to repeat in your mind, even though to them, it was just a passing thought. What Marcus Aurelius practiced was looking at these moments with some distance. Imagine you could watch your daily life like a movie for a second. All those little comments, faces, texts, and notifications pass by so quickly. Most of them will be lost soon after they happen. He trained himself to keep returning to this point of view. Whenever other people's opinions started feeling heavy or important, he would calmly remind himself that these words are like waves in the water. They rise up and then fade away. This idea isn't only helpful for big public problems or arguments. It's useful anytime you feel yourself getting pulled in to worry about what someone else thinks. When you start using this approach, you may notice it gives you some space to think before you react. Instead of jumping straight into irritation, embarrassment, or pride, you can pause and ask, in a few hours, will I care about this? In a year, will I remember this comment or this awkward moment? Usually the answer is no. This realization lets you focus your energy on things that last longer, like your own actions and the relationships that matter most to you. You get less attached to sudden praise, and you also do not get knocked down so easily by quick criticism. There's also a surprising freedom that comes from recognizing the short lifespan of outside opinions. If you are not spending your day collecting likes, compliments, or agreement from everyone, you have more time to work on the things you actually enjoy. You are not waiting for the next good comment just to feel all right, and you don't panic when a few harsh words show up. Even better, you can keep sharing your ideas and being yourself without worrying so much about how every single person will react. Instead of building your sense of self-worth on little moments of approval, you start building it on something more solid, like steady effort, learning, or sticking to your own goals. Marcus Aurelius believed that making peace with the fleeting nature of other people's thoughts can help you avoid building your life on a kind of emotional quicksand. It is a way to protect your mood and motivation from the small, random ups and downs that come from other people's reactions. The more you remember this idea, the easier it gets to choose for yourself what matters and what is simply background noise. It's not about shutting out everyone or pretending you never care. It's about seeing those outside voices for what they really are and not mistaking them for something permanent or deeply important. For most people, especially in today's world where so much attention is given to social media and quick feedback, this lesson is even more relevant. You might spend a lot of time creating something, only to get a few quick reactions before everyone moves on. It's tempting to feel disappointed or question your efforts if you don't receive the response you hoped for. Remembering how short-lived those reactions really are helps you see that your effort is never wasted if it matters to you. You get to decide why you act, create, or share, not the crowd. Marcus also points out that the same is true about negative moments. If someone gives you an odd look, criticizes you in a group, or skips answering your message, That moment will disappear just as quickly as any compliment. When you spot a reaction losing its importance, you can more easily let go of any shame, anger, or jealousy that might follow. This makes it much easier to keep moving forward without being slowed down by a bad mood that started with one fleeting comment. It is worth noticing how often people change their minds too. You might impress someone today, only to have them disagree with you tomorrow. Public opinion can flip without warning. If you attach your self-worth to every shift and change, the new trends, the popular opinions, the ever-changing reactions, you'll always be chasing something that never stands still. Marcus Aurelius dealt with this as an emperor, but the logic is the same no matter your situation. Opinions pass, and what really sticks is your own decision about how to live. Reminding yourself that these outside judgments are temporary doesn't mean ignoring reality or refusing to learn. Sometimes feedback can be useful, and even critical comments have something to teach. What Marcus recommended was putting those reactions in their place, understanding that even the useful comments lose their emotional charge after a while. You are free to learn without being weighed down, and free to celebrate without becoming addicted to nice words from others. When you notice yourself feeling bothered by something someone said, try to look at it from this angle for just a minute. Ask yourself how much attention you want to give that thought. Ask whether the person who said it will even think about it 10 minutes from now. Why should you spend hours reliving it? You will probably realize that the original comment wasn't as important as your reaction to it. In that moment, you have a choice to either let it color your mood or to treat it like the passing thing it really is. Applying this to your everyday life can help you shift your energy away from chasing validation and toward things you care about. If you finish a project or say something important, enjoy your own effort first. Notice if praise makes you happy or if criticism stings, but don't let those feelings decide what you do next. As you get better at seeing opinions as short-lived, it becomes clearer which voices you actually want to hear and which ones can just come and go like passing clouds. This approach from Marcus Aurelius is about having a more realistic view of how people work. Everyone is busy, everyone is distracted, and hardly anyone is paying as much attention to you as you think. Their attention moves on, just as yours does. The things that seem big today are often forgotten tomorrow, and even the biggest public opinions will lose their place over time. This can be a relief, especially when you realize you do not have to carry old criticism or old compliments around forever. By focusing on the impermanence of other people's opinions, you also start to build a sense of inner calm. This calm doesn't mean you never care, it just keeps you from getting stuck or spinning out over something that won't last. You notice your emotional reactions, you let yourself feel them, but you do not let them take over your whole day. When you return to your own purpose and keep making your own choices, every outside comment becomes a little less important. Marcus's method is especially useful when you feel overwhelmed by lots of reactions all at once. Maybe you tried something new, posted your work online, or shared a personal story. The first few minutes or hours after sharing can feel intense if you are waiting for approval or dreading criticism. If you notice your heart racing or your mind running in circles, bring yourself back to the idea that these reactions, whether good or bad, are not as permanent as they feel. Remind yourself to check how you feel again the next day. 9 times out of 10, the situation will have settled, and you will have something more solid to focus on again. Another thing that people learn when following this idea is that what you do and how you live matter more in the long run than any passing comment. Every day you are building up habits, relationships, and skills that last much longer than the opinions that surround you. Your character, effort, and intentions will shape your life far more than a wave of likes, a disagreement, or applause that vanishes by the next morning. Returning to this thought when you feel pulled into the world of outside approval can help reset your mood and bring you back to what's real. In practice, there are small ways to start using this approach right away. When a moment of criticism hits, pause and remember that it is just one snapshot, not your life story. If you find yourself craving another round of praise, pause and ask what you hope to achieve and why. Each time, notice how the reaction fades on its own, and how your own reasons for acting start to mean a little more to you. Over time, these brief pauses can add up to a new habit, one where outside opinion is only a small part of your day. There is also something helpful in considering how many countless opinions exist in the world. Billions of people across countries, ages, and backgrounds have opinions about everything, most of which you will never hear or be affected by. If you tried to please them all, you would not have any energy left for yourself. Marcus Aurelius seemed to accept that there would always be criticism, misunderstanding, and some praise, but he didn't let himself get caught up in the highs and lows. This gave him more energy and space to focus on living well by his own standards. By giving less weight to quick comments or passing trends, you become less afraid of mistakes, rejection, or awkward moments. Knowing that embarrassment or discomfort will not last forever, you can take greater risks, speak more honestly, and stretch yourself without being trapped by worry over what someone else might think. What starts as a way to handle outside approval slowly becomes a habit of real independence. So, the next time you feel like the world is watching and judging, remember how quickly those opinions will be replaced by something new. The people who matter most tend to stick around, and their thoughts will have a real place in your life. Everyone else is just passing by, dealing with their own worries and soon forgetting today's headline or conversation. Keeping your head clear about this lets you make decisions for better reasons. You waste less time chasing approval and more time building the kind of life that feels true to you. This is the kind of steady self-respect that Marcus Aurelius worked on every day, one moment at a time, and it has a quiet staying power that is more valuable than any short-lived applause. When you realize that most of the opinions floating around about you fade into the background, it becomes easier to pause before reacting, especially when something makes you feel defensive or proud. That pause gives you room to notice what is actually going on inside your head, rather than letting a comment or reaction from others decide your next move. This practice, which a lot of Stoics used and Marcus Aurelius wrote about, is basically mindful self-awareness. It is all about paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings without trying to control or judge them. You just watch what shows up and take a moment to understand it before jumping into a response. Practicing mindful self-awareness means not automatically believing every thought you have, especially the ones that tell you to chase approval or avoid criticism. Most of us have patterns we follow without even noticing. Maybe you immediately want to defend yourself if someone disagrees with you, or maybe you find yourself constantly checking how people react to what you share online. When you start observing your own mind, you notice when you are reacting out of old habits and seeking validation without really meaning to. Marcus Aurelius kept notes about these patterns in his own life, writing them down so he could spot when he was falling into them again. One thing that helps with growing this kind of awareness is writing things down. Just like Marcus Aurelius did with his meditations, you can keep a small notebook or digital note where you record moments that triggered you or made you feel the urge for validation. You might write something like, "I felt upset when my idea wasn't mentioned in the meeting," or "I caught myself checking for likes after posting a picture." These notes are not meant to judge yourself or feel guilty. They are about seeing your patterns more clearly and honestly. After a while, you start to notice similar situations come up again and again. Some people call this keeping a journal of the mind, and it can become a helpful way to look at yourself with curiosity instead of judgment. Over time, noticing your own patterns gives you more freedom to choose how you respond. You do not have to automatically seek out approval or feel bad when someone ignores your efforts. You can catch yourself in that moment, pause, and ask what you actually want, aside from other people's instant reactions. For example, if someone says something disappointing, instead of getting stuck in irritation, you could reflect on whether it's worth your attention at all. Or if you notice yourself craving a compliment for something small, you might pause and appreciate your own work, whether or not anyone else notices. This habit of pausing before reacting sounds simple, but it can completely change the way you handle stress, criticism, and even praise. When you are not on autopilot, you are less likely to be pushed around by your feelings or the pressure to be accepted by everyone. You are free to decide whether a thought is helpful or just background noise. And even if you find yourself caring what others think, you now know what is happening and can step back and decide if that's how you want to act. With mindful self-awareness, you can also take a step back from arguments or drama before things spiral out of control. If someone is rude or dismissive, noticing your first rush of anger or embarrassment gives you time to choose a calmer answer or to let it go altogether. This does not mean pretending the feelings are not there. It means giving yourself enough time to decide how you want to act, instead of just reacting right away. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how his first reaction was almost always automatic, but that a little bit of time and attention made him wiser in what he did next. It is not just about avoiding negative emotions either. When something good happens, like someone appreciating your work or cheering for you, mindful awareness lets you enjoy that experience without needing it to last forever or define your mood. You can take in the good feeling, thank the person, and move forward, still rooted in your own intentions rather than floating on outside praise. This balance means you are less likely to become addicted to compliments and more likely to feel steady inside, no matter what comes your way. Another detail that stands out from Marcus's writing is how he spent regular time reflecting on what really matters to him. This is a big part of mindful self-awareness. Maybe early in the morning or late at night, you can ask yourself questions like, what did I do today that felt genuine? Or, where was I just trying to fit in or please others? These simple self-checks help you see where your energy is going and whether it lines up with your values. If you notice yourself drifting toward people-pleasing or looking for extra approval, you can gently bring yourself back to center. Over time, building this habit makes it much easier to spot when you are acting from intention rather than habit. Let's say you get a piece of criticism that stings. Instead of spending hours replaying it in your mind, you can take a breath, note your reaction, and ask whether there is anything valuable to learn. If not, you can let it go. If yes, you can thank the person, even if only in your mind, and adjust your approach without losing your sense of self-worth. This way, feedback starts to feel more like information than an attack or a verdict on your value. Mindful self-awareness also helps with setting boundaries. If you can spot when someone's comment or expectation is starting to affect your state of mind, you are more prepared to say no or to distance yourself from negativity. Many people slip into the habit of accepting criticism or demands just to avoid conflict or gain approval. With practice, you become better at sensing when you are doing this and can choose to respond differently. That could mean asking for space, changing the subject, or simply not letting someone else's words take up space in your mind. You will also find that people can have completely different reactions to the same situation. This helps you see that their responses are more about their own history, mood, or insecurities, not about your actual worth. When you notice this, you can be more compassionate with others and with yourself. Instead of trying to edit your actions for every possible response, mindful awareness lets you act consistently based on your own standards, regardless of how unpredictable other people may be. Noticing your thoughts also lets you pay attention to your own self-talk. Many people walk around with a voice in their head that's harsh or demanding. When you start to catch these thoughts, I'm never good enough, everyone is judging me, I need to prove myself, you see them as just thoughts, not facts. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this by reminding himself that his mind was his own, and so was his ability to choose what to believe and what to ignore. Each time you catch a negative thought, you get a chance to decide if it actually serves you. A lot of this work is subtle and happens over many months or even years, but even small changes add up. When you get good at noticing your emotions and thoughts without letting them push you around, you start feeling less controlled by outside forces. Confidence becomes less about having everyone agree with you and more about trusting your inner sense of direction. You'll probably notice that it gets easier to handle both big embarrassments and little daily annoyances because you are not making every opinion or mistake a major crisis. Mindful self-awareness at its core is really about being present with yourself. That presence helps you spot all the ways you try to win applause or avoid disapproval, often without meaning to. By getting curious about your own triggers, those little things that push your buttons, you get to decide how you want to respond instead of just reacting because that's what you've always done. This process is not about becoming perfect or never caring about outside opinions. It's about choosing which ones actually matter and gently letting go of the rest. Marcus Aurelius's regular practice of checking in with himself, sometimes several times each day, shows just how useful this skill is for anyone, no matter their situation. By making these check-ins part of your routine, you will find yourself less shaken by sudden criticism, slow to react to drama, and quicker to return to your own goals. You won't always get it right, but each time you pause before responding to outside pressure, you give yourself an advantage for the next round. If you are curious about how to start with mindful self-awareness, you don't need anything fancy. You can set aside a few minutes each morning, evening, or during a lunch break, simply to breathe and notice what's moving through your mind. Ask yourself what has grabbed your attention today, what feelings keep coming back. Where did you notice the urge to seek validation? Even just naming these moments helps break the cycle. You can look at them with a clear eye, acknowledge what happened, and move ahead on your own terms. For people who struggle with overthinking, this practice can be especially freeing. Instead of feeling trapped in what-ifs or replaying conversations over and over, you learn to catch those loops and gently step out of them. The more you practice, the sooner you can spot when you are getting hooked by outside approval, and the easier it becomes to return to your own priorities. The big shift that happens with mindful self-awareness is that you start placing more value on your own experience, not just the reactions you get from others. You trust in your ability to figure things out, learn from mistakes, and not take every emotion or opinion too seriously. When you slip back into old patterns, which everyone does, you spot it faster and don't get stuck as long. Instead of needing to win over everyone around you, you are more at peace with standing where you are, even if not everyone gets it. You may also find that as you pay more attention to yourself, you start noticing where validation seeking comes from. Sometimes it's an old habit from childhood or a reaction to something painful that happened in the past. By shining a little light on those origins, they become less powerful. You see that you're not stuck repeating them forever. Each present moment check-in is a reminder that you're making choices right now, and those choices add up to a life that is more authentic, less pushed around by outside noise. Practicing mindful self-awareness also means patience. Nobody becomes a Stoic Zen master overnight. Some days you will react before thinking, or you'll get caught up in chasing approval, and that's totally normal. The point is not to punish yourself, but to keep coming back again and again to noticing what's really happening. With enough time and honest noticing, the times when you feel pulled by other people's opinions become less frequent and less intense. This way of living makes your life feel calmer, clearer, and a lot more honest. Instead of claiming not to care what anyone thinks, you're able to see when and why you care and decide intelligently what to do next. It's not about numbing your feelings or ignoring feedback, but about making sure your responses serve your real values and intentions. Over months and years, mindful self-awareness can change more than how you feel about validation. It shapes how you communicate, the risks you're willing to take, and how you recover from mistakes. You become more consistent in where you put your attention and energy. Important relationships start to feel more honest because you are not changing yourself to fit every expectation. You are also less likely to get stuck in cycles of self-doubt because you have learned to support yourself from the inside, not just from what's going on around you. With mindful self-awareness, you get to know yourself as you actually are, not just as someone reacting to every shift in approval. That opens up space for real growth, meaningful choices, and a sense of calm, even on chaotic days. The more you practice, the more you find that your sense of self-worth stops riding up and down with the opinions of others and starts growing quietly from within. There is something solid about knowing yourself this way, and it makes facing the ups and downs of daily life just a little bit easier. Getting to know yourself through mindful self-awareness also begins to shift the way you approach your interactions with other people. It becomes easier to spot the difference between reaching out for genuine connection and simply seeking approval or validation. This is something Marcus Aurelius noticed a long time ago, and it's still just as true for us now. In everyday life, it's easy to confuse the need to be liked with the desire for a real, meaningful bond. Sometimes you might find yourself doing things just to keep the peace, impress someone, or avoid being left out, rather than actually building relationships that matter. The tricky part is how natural that can feel, especially when almost everyone around you is doing the same thing. The urge to constantly seek approval can slowly transform friendship or connection into a routine of people-pleasing. One way to see this in motion is to look at performance in groups, social settings, or even at work. You might catch yourself laughing a bit louder at a joke you didn't find funny, simply because everyone else did. Or maybe you hesitate to speak your true opinion, worried it will get a weird reaction. Sometimes the motivation underneath is not about wanting to bond with people, it's about wanting to avoid rejection or awkwardness. That's where validation seeking takes over and genuine connection gets lost. You become trapped in a cycle of trying to read the room and adjusting your words or actions until everyone else seems comfortable. Over time, this can feel empty or exhausting because you're not really being yourself, and the relationships you build from this place tend not to last. Marcus Aurelius, along with other Stoic writers, was direct in pointing out that superficial approval and true connection do not come from the same place. When you approach a relationship focused on impressing the other person or being who you think they want, you're not connecting on an equal level. You might blend in or avoid conflict, but you're holding back parts of yourself. At some point, everyone senses when an interaction is a little forced, and it can keep people from relaxing or feeling truly comfortable around each other. Over time, even if you are surrounded by people, you might still feel alone because you never get to show who you really are. Spotting the difference between genuine connection and approval seeking gets easier when you step back and look at your own motivations. Pay attention to what makes you reach out, share a story, or offer support. Are you hoping for praise, a compliment, or just some reassurance? Or are you showing up as yourself, hoping to get to know someone or support them in return? If you notice that you keep measuring your interactions by the kind of feedback you get, it's a sign that you're slipping into the old validation loop. Instead, you can start shifting your focus back to understanding, listening, and being present. When you aim for authenticity in your relationships, it changes the way you communicate and what you expect from others. You shift from worrying about, am I doing this right? Or do they like me? To questions like, do I like this person? Can I trust them? Is there an honest exchange happening here, or is one of us just playing a part? When connection is authentic, disagreement becomes less threatening, and awkward silences are less scary because you're not trying to fill every moment with proof of your value. You can relax, share your opinions, and know that it's normal not to have everyone agree. In fact, differences make for more interesting, rewarding conversations. Building these kinds of relationships is not just about standing firm or always telling it like it is. It means listening as much as you talk and allowing others to show up as themselves too, without forcing agreement or faking comfort. Marcus Aurelius emphasized this balance. Strong relationships are created between people who see and accept each other, not people who are constantly trying to manage each other's impressions. Sometimes it means letting a disagreement slide without making it personal. Other times it's about supporting someone for their benefit, not for a pat on the back or a feeling of being needed. One practical tip is to notice how you feel after different kinds of social situations. After a conversation where you were focused on being liked, you might leave feeling drained, restless, or unsure about where you stand. But in a conversation where you felt able to be real, you usually walk away with a sense of peace, even if there were some disagreements or awkward moments. That's because real connection is based on trust and honesty, showing up as yourself, not on delivering what you think the other person wants. Another common place where approval-seeking and genuine connection get mixed up is online. With so much of our social life happening on apps and platforms, it's easy to fall into habits where the main goal is to be noticed or praised. Instead of building relationships that matter, you might post something just for likes or positive comments and find yourself checking your phone over and over again. But the satisfaction is almost always temporary. If someone doesn't respond the way you hoped, it can set off a chain reaction of doubts or second-guessing. That pull to please the crowd or shape your image to get the most approval is strong, but it rarely leads to deeper, more satisfying relationships. Online, it's even more important to pause before you respond or post and ask what you're really hoping for. Are you looking for a specific reaction, or are you sharing something that feels real to you, regardless of what anyone else thinks? It's worth remembering that a lot of digital reactions are almost automatic. Quick likes, brief comments, scrolling past. They don't signal genuine interest or connection on their own. If you make your self-worth depend on this kind of feedback, you end up chasing a moving target. Instead, focusing on honest individual exchanges, even if there are fewer of them, can lead to more meaningful and trustworthy bonds. Making this shift is not always easy because the urge to seek approval shows up in subtle ways. It can creep in when you start comparing your life, looks, or achievements to others, or when you decide to mention only the good stuff about yourself to fit in. The more you pay attention to when this happens, the more you recognize how it limits the chances for a real connection. You may realize you haven't talked about your real interests, worries, or ideas for a long time because you've been filtering everything to avoid rejection. The friendships or relationships that result from this never really grow past the surface. On the other hand, When you start letting go of the need to be validated in every interaction, you give both yourself and others permission to be real. That could look like admitting when you're tired, sharing something you're not sure everyone will agree with, or being honest about what you want and don't want. The first few times, it might feel strange or risky. You might notice some tension if people aren't used to you being so direct or open. But over time, the people who respect or care about you will stick around, and those who only liked you for your approval-seeking fade into the background. Building genuine connection is also about quality, not just quantity. Some people collect contacts or followers, thinking that the more they have, the more connected they will feel. But real support and honest friendship usually grow from a handful of strong, trusted relationships, not dozens or hundreds of shallow ones. When you stop using relationships as a way to get constant validation, you have more energy and time to invest in the people who really matter. These are the relationships that tend to last through ups, downs, changes, and challenges. They might not always be picture perfect, but they offer a sense of belonging that is hard to replace. There's also something powerful about being the example in your group or community. When you are clear about your values, honest about your feelings, and not chasing constant approval, it opens the door for others to do the same. Some people might be surprised at first, but real connection grows when everyone can drop the act. You become the kind of friend or family member who is known for listening, being consistent, and saying what you really mean. This builds an environment where mutual respect grows and where people are less likely to play games or use each other as a source of reassurance. Another key part of focusing on genuine connection is learning how to listen deeply. It's easy to slip into habits where, instead of listening to someone, you're just waiting for your turn to talk or thinking about what to say to get a good response. When you set aside the need to be impressive or dominate the conversation, you can tune in to what's actually being said and respond with curiosity. Marcus Aurelius made a point to remind himself that every person has something to teach him, and that real strength comes from learning rather than dominating. Sometimes, focusing on quality means embracing moments of silence, disagreement, or awkwardness, rather than trying to fill them with constant chatter or efforts to lighten the mood. Authentic connection is strengthened when both people feel safe to speak honestly, or even to sit quietly together, without fearing that silence means something is wrong. The urge to fill every space with jokes, impressive stories, or flattery comes from a place of wanting validation, not true closeness. A shift toward authentic connection also affects your relationships at work or in group projects. When you're not always trying to be the most popular, match everyone's exact expectations, or live up to some impossible standard, you are free to contribute in a way that feels honest and helpful. The teams or partnerships that last are usually built on trust and a willingness to bring different opinions to the table. Disagreements become chances to learn, not battles over who is right or who looks good. Leaders who communicate openly and don't need endless praise often inspire the most loyalty too. A big step in all of this is to stop treating every relationship as a scorecard or competition. When you stop keeping tally of who gave what compliment or who responded quickly to your message, you're less likely to get stuck in resentment or insecurity. You may also realize that not all relationships need to be deep or long-lasting for them to be valuable. A brief, honest exchange with a colleague or a real thank you to someone during your day can sometimes be more meaningful than months of small talk or empty praise. As you practice focusing on genuine connection, you get better at saying no to social dynamics that drain you. You become more comfortable with choosing a small group of supportive people and letting go of the need to please everyone else. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or never meeting new people. It means bringing your real self into each new interaction, so that if a new connection forms, it stands on solid ground. You unlearn the habit of editing yourself for each new audience and learn to enjoy simply being around people who know and like the real you. For people who have spent years in approval-seeking mode, the first few steps can feel challenging. It might mean disappointing someone, missing out on a little recognition, or feeling left out of a group's inside jokes. But the rewards are worth sticking with. Each time you take a small risk, expressing a true opinion, leaving out a humble brag, skipping the effort to be on all the time, you give yourself the gift of ease. You will likely notice that over time, social anxiety fades, resentment goes down, and relationships start to feel less like work and more like something that supports you. Letting go of the compulsion for validation doesn't mean giving up on kindness, encouragement, or close relationships. It means making sure these things are real, not just traded for approval or out of habit. The rewards are deeper bonds, more satisfying conversations, and the rare comfort that comes from feeling seen and respected for who you really are. It is a kind of freedom that no amount of likes, praise, or popularity can deliver. Learning to focus on authentic connection does not mean you will never feel the old pull for approval. Those habits run deep for most people and will pop up from time to time. The difference is that now you notice them, pause, and have more choices about how to respond. You gradually build up a new foundation for your relationships, one based on real mutual support, listening, and trust, instead of the constant search for reassurance. As you keep making decisions from this place, life starts to feel more relaxed and peaceful. You realize you can be yourself, disagreements don't signal disaster, and being liked or noticed is not the same as being loved or respected. The friendships and partnerships that grow from genuine presence stay with you, while surface-level attention-seeking fades into the background. And even in moments of loneliness or conflict, you find you have more resilience inside because your sense of connection isn't hinging on every single outside reaction. This approach makes life simpler. It's less about trying to win over the crowd and more about being in the company of those who value honesty and care. Over the weeks and months, you watch as your interactions gradually shift, conversations open up, trust grows, and stress about whether you fit in drops off. Instead of chasing approval, you're sharing your time and energy with people who appreciate you as you are, and that is something you can keep building every single day. It's interesting how, when you begin to build relationships based on authenticity and honest connection, you find it easier to step away from needing constant validation. You start to realize you don't have to keep up a performance, and you have more energy to invest in things that really matter to you. A big part of this shift is understanding what you actually control. This is where Marcus Aurelius, along with the entire Stoic tradition, gets very practical by focusing on the idea of inner virtue. For them, the thing you can truly rely on is your own character, the moral qualities you develop and practice every day, rather than things like praise, attention, material success, or flashy achievements. Let's talk plainly about this for a moment. A lot of people go through life believing that confidence is something you get from the outside. Maybe if you win some awards, get a promotion, receive compliments, or finally look a certain way, then you'll feel truly secure. But Marcus Aurelius suggests that those things are nice, but they're not a real foundation. The only type of confidence that lasts comes from the inside. It grows stronger as you practice living in a way that feels true to you, sticking with your values even when nobody's watching, and acting with consistency, regardless of the reaction you get from others. The Stoics saw virtue as the set of qualities that actually shape your life. Things like honesty, courage, patience, fairness, and self-control. When you focus on these, you have something solid to build confidence around because these are always within your reach. It doesn't really matter what your situation is, how much money you have, or what's trending on social media. Nobody can take away your ability to be a decent person. In Marcus Aurelius's own routine, a lot of his time was spent reflecting on whether he had acted justly, with self-control, with kindness, and with wisdom. Every day was a new test, and he wrote notes on his own progress. He reminded himself that whether he won or lost, the way he practiced these inner qualities was always up to him. If you take a moment to look at how this works in real life, it's actually pretty simple. When you're making your choices each day, you can check in quietly and ask, is this coming from a place of honesty? Or, am I treating people kindly? Or, did I do the work I said I'd do today? These might sound like small details, but they add up. Each time you show up with a little more patience, or you tell the truth instead of exaggerating to impress, you build self-respect. That's the kind of self-worth that nobody can take away, not even the harshest critic. It's also pretty clear that when you practice these virtues, you start to notice a change in what you care about. If your main goal is to act with courage or kindness, it begins to matter a lot less whether people are paying attention every time you do the right thing. You focus on doing it because it fits your standards, not because you're hoping for applause. This is what Marcus Aurelius described again and again, living for your principles, not for performance. That doesn't mean you become cold or ignore all approval, but you stop letting the approval decide how you feel about yourself. Another thing about making virtue your foundation is that it keeps you steady. External recognition comes and goes. Sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. And sometimes it arrives for reasons that have nothing to do with you. But doing the right thing and knowing it gives you a kind of quiet confidence that lasts through ups and downs. Say you stand up for someone being treated badly at work, or you tell the truth even when it's not popular. Maybe nobody thanks you. Maybe someone criticizes you instead. But you know at the end of the day that you acted according to your own code. That feeling sticks, and it makes you stronger the next time you face a challenge. People sometimes think that focusing on virtue is boring or restrictive, but in practice, it's actually the opposite. It takes real courage and energy to be kind when you're tired, or fair when it would be easier to take a shortcut, or honest when stretching the truth might win you more approval. The effort it takes makes you feel alive, and each time you succeed, even if it's not perfect, you build more faith in yourself. The compliments or likes you get for these things are temporary, but the shift in your own self-image is permanent. Over time, you start to trust yourself deeply, and other people can sense it too. Marcus Aurelius also wrote about how practicing virtue helps you see life's challenges differently. When you face setbacks, mistakes, or hard criticism, they're not the end of the world anymore. They become a test of your character, not your worth as a person. So instead of seeing failure as proof that you're not good enough, you see it as an opportunity to practice patience, humility, or resolve. You start measuring your success not in trophies or compliments, but in small victories, staying patient in a traffic jam, being generous when no one expects it, persevering through a tough project without needing praise. This shift is really noticeable in relationships. If you care first about being honest, fair, and supportive, your connections naturally improve. You're less likely to fall into people-pleasing or tiptoeing around for approval, and more likely to set clear boundaries, respect others, and stand by your word. You make friends and keep partners based on trust and mutual respect, not on status games or constant reassurance. The feeling of security you get from having a few strong relationships, even if they're not perfect or flashy, is much more powerful than chasing endless likes. When you concentrate on building virtue, you also become a lot less vulnerable to manipulation or peer pressure. It doesn't matter as much if someone else tries to shame you, pressure you to join in gossip, or drag you into drama. Your values act like an internal compass. You notice when things don't match up with who you want to be, and you feel more comfortable saying no, even if it disappoints someone. Marcus Aurelius himself faced this kind of social pressure at the highest level. Imagine leading an empire with everyone watching and judging. He kept coming back to this principle. As long as he practiced what he believed to be right, everything else mattered much less. None of this means you'll never make mistakes or have days when you slip up. Marcus Aurelius admitted his own setbacks all the time. He made wrong decisions and got swept up in emotion or insecurity like anyone else. The important part was coming back day after day to review and recommit to his core virtues. He didn't waste time beating himself up over little failures. Instead, each moment was a new chance to try again, and that kept his confidence and self-worth growing in a steady way. There's also a sense of purpose that starts to develop when you live for virtue instead of outside validation. You wake up each day with a reason that goes beyond what's happening on the surface. It feels good to know you're working on something lasting, something that actually matters to you, even if it's not always exciting. You might not get cheered on for every small habit or decision, but you see the results as weeks, months, and years go by. Suddenly, you realize you're a person others can rely on, not because you always get approval, but because you're grounded in who you are. Marcus Aurelius also believed that virtues work together and reinforce each other. If you're being honest, it's easier to be fair. If you practice patience, you become more understanding and tolerant. If you stick with your work, courage, and kindness, you'll naturally attract people who respect those qualities. And when life gets tough, as it always does, these habits make it easier to face difficulty without feeling lost or resentful. For people who are new to this way of living, it can feel overwhelming at first. There's a temptation to try to get it perfect from day one, but the point isn't to score yourself with a checklist or live up to some impossible standard. Marcus Aurelius suggested taking small, regular steps. Look honestly at your day, notice when you lived up to your values and when you didn't, and keep going. If you reflect for even a few minutes most days, you'll spot patterns, get better at catching yourself in old habits, and gradually build confidence that feels natural. Something important about the Stoic approach, and especially the way Marcus Aurelius practiced it, is that it's based on action, not just intention. It's not enough to say you value honesty, for example, or to think of yourself as brave. The strength comes from actually doing honest or courageous things, even if they're small and nobody else sees them. The more you act in alignment with your chosen virtues, the more real and solid your confidence feels. That's why this way of life works even when you're facing a tough crowd, an uncertain career path, or a stage where approval just isn't coming. Over time, focusing on your character, your virtues, has a spillover effect. It shows up in how you treat strangers, handle criticism, work through disappointment, and support others. People start to recognize you as someone steady, someone who has a backbone and doesn't fall apart every time they're not patted on the back. Intuitively, others trust you more, and you find yourself less caught up in comparison or jealousy because your sense of value is no longer riding on each high or low of public opinion. What's also reassuring is that, even on tough days, your commitment to virtue is 100% yours. Maybe a project flops, maybe someone is rude to you, or maybe you just have an off week. Those things happen to everyone, but they can't take away the progress you make in how you choose to act. Minor failures become less personal, and you bounce back faster because you understand that what matters is doing your best with what you actually control. There's something deeply comforting about having that kind of focus. Looking at society today, it often feels like everyone is being told to stand out, win awards, or get noticed. It's easy to think that having more followers, status, or productivity proves your worth. But if you pay attention to people who seem truly satisfied with their lives, it's almost always the ones who build character and stick to their values, no matter who happens to be watching. Their confidence isn't loud or showy, but it is steady, and it lasts. You don't have to become a different person overnight. Doing this work is slow and steady. Some days you'll notice real breakthroughs. Maybe you stand your ground in a hard conversation, or you take the high road when you really want to snap back. Other days, you'll catch yourself slipping, and that's fine too. The key is repeatability. Each time you act with a bit more character, the desire for validation gets quieter, until one day you realize you simply don't need it in the same way. You know who you are, what you stand for, and that's enough. All of this comes back to a key Stoic lesson. External things aren't under your direct control, but your inner qualities are. Marcus Aurelius repeated variations of this to himself in his private notes, reminding himself that reputation, approval, and even his own emperor's power were all temporary and could disappear any day. What stuck with him and what he wanted to keep growing were the qualities that no one else could touch: fairness, kindness, courage, and wisdom. Living for these qualities made every other part of life a little easier to handle. You might be surprised by how quickly life changes when your main goal shifts away from winning approval. There's less drama, less worry over status or image, and more real satisfaction. Marcus saw this firsthand, facing constant judgment, rumors, and power struggles, yet focusing on character kept him from being blown off course. In the same way, your life gets simpler. You spot less temptation to edit yourself to please others, and you worry less about things you can't control. So, in daily reality, what does focusing on inner virtues look like? It means being honest when you could lie to save yourself trouble, taking responsibility when something goes wrong, showing patience when you want to snap, and keeping promises even if it would be easier to let them slide. It's the dozens of little decisions you make every single day that add up, each one a small stone in the foundation of your confidence. There's nothing dramatic or splashy about building virtue, but step by step it shifts your self-image and your relationships. You stop looking over your shoulder for applause. Instead, the approval you want most comes from the feeling of knowing you acted in a way you respect. If someone happens to notice, great. If not, that's okay too. In this way, every day becomes an exercise in strengthening real confidence, a type the world doesn't give and can't easily take away. That's the confidence Stoics like Marcus Aurelius trusted most, and it's as effective today as it was almost 2,000 years ago. Putting character and virtue first makes your everyday decisions a lot simpler, but it also brings out the times when life gets uncomfortable or you face open criticism. Nobody likes dealing with tough feedback, awkward moments, or setbacks that seem to expose your flaws. Still, Marcus Aurelius paid close attention to how you handle these difficult situations. He saw them as normal parts of any life, especially one lived with integrity and honest effort. Instead of running from criticism or trying to make everything easy, he used these moments to become stronger and more self-reliant. There's a kind of pressure that shows up the moment someone disagrees with you or points out a mistake. You might feel embarrassed, annoyed, or maybe want to defend yourself right away. Sometimes people avoid trying new things or speaking up just so they don't have to risk feeling that sting. But if you spend your years dodging criticism, always staying in your comfort zone, you keep shrinking the space where you can actually grow. Marcus Aurelius took the opposite approach. Rather than treating discomfort like a sign that something's wrong, he understood it was part of everyday living for anyone growing as a person. Not all criticism is created equal. Some complaints come from people who barely know you and are just reacting to a tiny part of your actions. Others can be unfair, careless, or even mean-spirited, but every now and then, a bit of discomfort reveals something you can actually use to improve. Learning to sort out what's helpful from what's just noise is the first step toward feeling less threatened. Marcus made a practice of asking himself if there was anything useful in the feedback he received. If the answer was yes, he tried to learn from it with no drama or self-pity. If the answer was no, he left it behind and moved forward. Getting used to discomfort doesn't mean you become cold or numb. It means you recognize the difference between emotional pain you need to sit with for a while and the kind that's about learning something new. For example, imagine you get a negative review at work. Your first reaction might be frustration or disappointment, but if you pause and look past the feeling, there may be something in the review that helps you get better at your job. That's the moment Marcus would say you're growing stronger, taking what helps, ignoring what doesn't, and never letting it shake your sense of self-worth. It's a skill that takes practice, but with time, it turns even bad days into opportunities for self-improvement. This approach works outside work and career too. In friendships, romantic relationships, and even family life, people occasionally let you down, disagree, or point out your mistakes. Living with integrity means those situations sting, but you don't crumble or give up. You have the chance to listen for any truth in what's being said, apologize or fix what you can, and move on without letting shame or fear take control. The more often you do this, the more comfortable you get with discomfort. It stops feeling like a sign that you're failing and starts feeling like a normal part of learning or being human. You also get better at handling setbacks or failures. Marcus Aurelius's time as emperor was full of hard decisions, power struggles, and public criticisms. He couldn't please everyone, and he regularly faced situations where his actions were questioned. He returned, over and over, to the idea that you can't let criticism become an obstacle to acting according to your values. Instead, you let yourself feel what you feel, gather any lessons you can use, and get back to work. You don't deny mistakes or pretend you're above feedback, but you stop letting those moments define your mood or future choices. When you choose to face discomfort and criticism directly, you actually become less controlled by other people's opinions. If your only goal is to avoid feeling awkward, rejected, or exposed, you'll end up shrinking your world. But when you understand that difficult situations are a natural part of life, you stop seeing them as disasters. Marcus often reminded himself that if you never experience resistance, it's probably because you're not doing much that matters to you. By showing up, trying, and accepting that some criticism will come, you are free to seek real achievement and real connection. Part of this comes from getting more familiar with the idea that no matter what you do, someone somewhere will see it differently or find fault. It's something everyone faces sooner or later, whether you're raising kids, managing a team, or creating art. Even the best intentions get misunderstood. Marcus Aurelius accepted that even with the power of an emperor, he could not make everyone approve. Instead of bending himself out of shape to please everyone, he did what he believed was right, took the hits, and moved forward. The result wasn't arrogance or stubbornness, but a kind of focus that made him less anxious and more resilient. There's an unexpected benefit that comes from opening yourself to criticism and challenge. You begin to value honest feedback and tough conversations. If you're always shielded from discomfort, you never hear what might actually help you improve. Marcus advised himself not to surround his life with flattery or yes men. When criticism is fair, even if it hurts, you can use it to sharpen your skills, broaden your view, and avoid bigger mistakes down the road. And when the criticism isn't fair, learning to let it go without a burst of anger or shame shows maturity and real confidence. It's worth also pointing out that embracing discomfort doesn't have to mean going it alone. You can ask friends or mentors you trust for feedback and support. That way, when hard words come from a thoughtful source, you know it comes from care, not a desire to put you down. Marcus kept close advisors he respected, and he often reflected on their views because he wanted to learn more about himself and his blind spots. This openness to different viewpoints helped him keep growing, even when the pressure was high. Handling discomfort also changes the way you see your limits. If you've always tried to be perfect or please everyone, any mistake feels like proof that you don't measure up. But when you're willing to face difficult moments, failure stops being the end of your story. You start to see it as a normal, even useful part of growth. Instead of hiding your flaws or working overtime to cover up every slip, you can relax a little and admit where things went wrong. It's not about celebrating mistakes, but using them honestly to move ahead with less fear. Over time, people who get used to criticism and discomfort are less likely to freeze up when facing something new or when plans fall apart. You build a habit of action. Even if you don't know exactly what will happen or who will approve, you give things a try and adjust along the way. That willingness to act, even when outcomes are uncertain, makes you bolder, more creative, and less thrown by life's curveballs. Marcus was known for sticking with decisions and plans even when he didn't get immediate approval or success. Dealing with criticism also helps you learn how to separate the comment from your own sense of identity. Instead of believing that you are what others say about you, you see feedback as information, not a label. Whether someone says you did badly or brilliantly, you remain pretty much the same person on the inside. The distance you create between your actions and your value is what helps you keep moving forward. It lets you try new things, admit when you don't know something, or pivot when you need to try a new approach. Embracing discomfort then turns each setback, awkward conversation, or piece of criticism into another part of your learning process. You become less fragile, which in turn encourages you to rely less on outside validation and more on your own judgment. People are drawn to this kind of steadiness. They trust that you won't collapse at the first sign of trouble or need endless reassurance to keep going. This reliability is a big part of what Stoics mean when they talk about strength of character. Also, by learning to handle discomfort without resentment or drama, you become a lot easier to work and live with. You're not constantly defensive, bitter, or out for revenge every time things don't go your way. Instead, you can talk through disagreements, change your mind when needed, and own up to mistakes without losing your cool. The people around you will notice this, and it tends to earn you more respect than always being right or constantly defending your reputation. This approach doesn't mean you have to enjoy criticism or thrive on pressure. Most people never stop feeling a little tense in tough situations. What changes is your skill at not letting it run your life. You become practiced at noticing your feelings, deciding what part, if any, deserves a response, and moving on to the next thing. That skill gives you back hours of time and a lot of mental peace compared to getting stuck in old worries or self-doubt. Facing discomfort and criticism also helps you develop patience. Not just with yourself, but with other people. You start to realize that everyone's working through their own set of fears, flaws, and bad days. This makes you more compassionate when someone lashes out or gives unfair feedback. You know it's often about them, not you, and you're less likely to take it personally or hold a grudge. Marcus Aurelius wrote plenty about this kind of understanding, which let him stay focused on his work despite plenty of noise and pushback. A steady habit of welcoming rather than running from difficult moments slowly transforms how you see risk, opportunity, and your own capabilities. Once you stop needing everything to go smoothly and everyone to agree, you discover new strengths you didn't know you had. You get better at solving complicated problems, handling conversations that used to intimidate you, and stepping up when something really matters. These skills pay off in work, friendships, and every area where human opinions can be unpredictable. People often ask how to actually start on this path. The answer is simple, but not always easy. When discomfort or criticism shows up, notice how you're feeling, pause, and ask if there's anything useful to be learned. If yes, use it. If not, let it pass, and get back to what matters. At first, the pause might last just a second or two, and old reactions will pop up. But with every attempt, you build a little more courage and resilience. Before long, moments that used to ruin your day become chances to prove you can roll with the punches. So what changes after putting this into practice for a while? You start having more honest conversations. Fewer things catch you by surprise because you expect life to be a little messy and unpredictable. You also get less interested in showing off or covering up mistakes. People may still criticize or question your choices, but you don't take it as a verdict on who you are. More often, you focus on what you can control, your effort, your next step, and your attitude. This is exactly what Marcus Aurelius encouraged in his own journals and what anyone can practice today. There is also a major relief in being able to admit that you felt let down, embarrassed, or challenged by something or someone, and then moving on. you're less controlled by past awkwardness. Your mind gets used to seeing criticism and discomfort as normal, making each new situation less scary. As a bonus, the people who matter to you often respond by being more honest and supportive because they see that you're not hiding from reality or expecting perfection. Gradually, by treating discomfort and criticism as growth opportunities, you become less desperate for constant praise and outside approval. You start to value your own judgment, bounce back more quickly after challenges, and stand up for yourself with more ease. The fear of what others might think gets smaller, replaced by a curiosity about what's possible when you try, learn, and persist. Even setbacks start to look a little less threatening, and you feel more freedom to experiment or change directions if needed. Taking Marcus Aurelius's advice about criticism and discomfort to heart doesn't mean you'll stop wishing for everything to go smoothly, but it does make you a lot less fearful about hitting bumps along the way. You'll trust yourself to deal with tough situations, to listen when feedback is helpful, and ignore what's just noise. That's the kind of stability and independence that not only gets you through difficult days, but also allows you to live and work in a way where outside validation is no longer in control of your happiness. Once you get comfortable dealing with discomfort and criticism, you start noticing just how much freedom you can get from deciding for yourself what success actually means. That's another point Marcus Aurelius makes clear, and it's deeply practical for anyone tired of being ruled by what others think is important. For so many people, especially now with constant comparison and the pressure to keep up, defining what it means to have done a good job or to live a successful life gets shaped almost entirely by trends and opinions from the outside world. It becomes automatic to let yourself be measured by numbers nobody really controls. What's considered impressive, what gets noticed, how much you've achieved by a certain age, or how well you fit into the roles set by family, friends, or even random strangers on the internet. But the more you play by these outside rules, the less satisfaction you find, and the more fragile your confidence becomes. There's always some new bar to clear, some other person who looks like they're farther along, or a shifting goalpost that keeps you chasing and rarely arriving. Marcus Aurelius flipped that script by making a habit of setting his own standards. He consistently wrote about living in line with his own values and letting external benchmarks or rewards be only a minor part of the picture. When you start to find your own definitions for what matters and what counts as progress, you get to step off that exhausting treadmill of comparison. In daily life, this is the move that helps you become less reactive to every twist and turn in public opinion. You learn to take pride in completing work you're proud of, no matter who notices or what the official result looks like. That way, your progress is measured by intentions, effort, and personal improvement rather than just applause or numbers. What's interesting is that once you choose your own standards, you might find they have very little to do with what's currently popular or trending. Maybe what you really care about is being a reliable friend, doing quality work even on the small stuff, or learning something new every year, regardless of recognition. For another person, the main goal could be creative growth, or being a calming presence for their family, or volunteering time to a cause they believe in. What matters is that the benchmarks you set come from who you actually are, not expectations handed to you by someone else, or the quick feedback that comes from constant scrolling and comparing. This process of setting internal standards isn't about ignoring the outside world entirely. There's nothing wrong with learning from others or accepting goals that genuinely inspire you, but it's about pausing, checking in, and being honest about what you want to build your life around. For Marcus Aurelius, that meant a daily self-check. Was he staying true to his principles, acting with fairness, courage, and thoughtfulness, or just coasting by and hoping to look good to the crowd? For you, it might mean sitting down at least once a week, maybe on a Sunday afternoon or a quiet morning, and asking, what would actually make me proud of myself? Then you get to measure your week against that, not against who had the loudest post or got the most approval. A big benefit of defining your own standards is that you suddenly have something steady to guide your choices, even when things are uncertain. Instead of swinging between highs and lows every time you hear good or bad feedback, you have a compass that keeps you grounded. If you set out to be honest in your work and relationships, then you know what matters most in tough situations. When you finish something important and know you gave it everything, that's your signal of success, even if nobody else is there to clap or give you a thumbs up. If you mess up but reflect, take responsibility, and do what you can to make it right, you count that as a win by your definition. This new way of measuring success is especially helpful in environments where the crowd is fickle or impossible to please. If you've ever had a job where feedback changes from day to day, or spent time in a group that praises you 1 minute and ignores you the next, you know how exhausting it is to chase after approval. By setting your own terms, you protect yourself against wild mood swings that don't actually fit the reality of your effort. Marcus Aurelius learned this as emperor, where praise and blame would come and go with every political wind. He kept his focus on quiet, regular improvement based on clear personal goals, no matter what other people thought about it that day. Making your own rules doesn't mean you never feel doubt. It's totally normal to look around from time to time and wonder if you're on track, or to ask others for ideas. The difference is in how you handle that doubt. Instead of letting it take over or send you into a spiral of uncertainty, use it as a signal to revisit your own standards. Sometimes you might adjust them a little, learn something new from someone you respect, or realize you care about something you never noticed before, but you're still choosing. You're not just reacting to the loudest voices. Another plus to setting your own benchmarks. You waste a lot less time and energy trying to impress people who don't share your values or understand your story. Everyone has different backgrounds and ideas about what really matters. Some will care about achievement, others about kindness, others about play, learning, or helping. It's liberating to see that not everyone has to agree on what success looks like. When you drop the need to have the whole world nod along, you start spending more time with people who truly get you, and less time exhausted by chasing after impossible approval. A practical piece of advice here is to separate out what you can control from what you can't. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the difference between internal standards, how you act, how you speak, the attitude you bring, and external results, which are shaped by 100 things beyond your control. You can decide to be diligent and creative, but you can't guarantee a promotion. You can choose to be honest, but you can't force everyone to like you for it. The win, by Stoic logic, is measured by your process and commitment, not just the outcome. When you live according to this rule, you feel steadier and more satisfied, regardless of whether the recognition comes immediately, late, or not at all. It's easy to think, but won't people think less of me if I don't meet the standard they expect? Maybe, but Marcus Aurelius reminds us that those opinions are temporary and often change without warning. The standards that really hold up are the ones you choose for yourself and stick with over time. This doesn't separate you from society. In fact, people tend to respect those who are quietly consistent and clearly guided by their values. You may not always get cheered for it, but the right people notice, and those bonds are far more rewarding than the noisy approval of a crowd that moves on the next day. People sometimes worry that focusing on their own standards means they'll become self-centered or not open to challenge. In reality, this approach encourages healthy humility and learning. By reflecting on your goals, you're encouraged to listen to meaningful feedback and even change direction when needed, but only when it makes sense to you. You avoid the trap of blindly following the group or stubbornly refusing to learn. Marcus did this by keeping honest advisors around him who he trusted to tell him the truth, not just what they thought he wanted to hear. You can do the same in your own life by seeking out conversation with friends, mentors, or colleagues who share your values and are willing to be direct and fair with you. A more personal side effect of internal standards is that your own sense of fulfillment grows, whether or not there's an audience. The satisfaction that comes with finishing something hard or sticking to your priorities can't be faked or borrowed from outside. Every time you act in line with your convictions, even if no one else understands, you gain a bit more confidence. That makes it far easier to try new things, make mistakes, and bounce back from setbacks, because you know your worth isn't riding on a single result. It's a huge relief to feel proud without having to advertise it or prove it to everyone you know. Over the weeks, months, and years, this mindset transforms your habits. Instead of delaying action until you're sure it'll impress someone, you start projects out of curiosity, passion, or a desire to learn. You take more creative risks, make more decisions for yourself, and stop postponing things that matter just because you're worried they won't be popular. When you reflect each season or year, you see progress not just in what you've done, but in how you show up for yourself. Every small act of integrity makes it feel easier to do the right thing next time, until it's just second nature. Keeping your own standards also helps you notice when the outside world is pushing you in directions that don't fit. If you find yourself tired, anxious, or restless, it's often a sign you've started living by someone else's idea of success. That's the right moment to pause and ask, is this goal really mine? Sometimes we take on expectations without realizing, and it's only through honest reflection that you spot which ones truly matter to you. Marcus Aurelius journaled nearly every day for this very reason. His writing wasn't just for venting, it was a tool for sorting out motives, checking against personal values, and clearing out unhelpful standards so he could concentrate on what he knew mattered. Of course, the practice isn't perfect. You'll have moments of doubt, days where public opinion stings, or times when you're tempted to compare yourself to others. That's part of being human. The work is really about coming back to yourself again and again to find where you stand. Over time, returning to your chosen standards becomes easier. Even if you drift for a few days or get caught up in the latest trend, you know how to find your balance and start fresh. Some people find it helpful to put their standards or personal values in writing, on a piece of paper, a sticky note, or in a private journal. It might be a list of qualities you admire or a few sentences about the kind of life you want to live. Reading this during tough moments or before making big decisions can help cut through the noise and remind you of the path you want to walk. It's not about rigid rules or making life narrow. It's about making sure your actions are aligned with what you believe matters most. Another benefit is that internal standards bring clarity to decision-making. When you're faced with choices, big or small, you have something solid to reference. Instead of being swayed by guilt, peer pressure, or fear of missing out, you can ask which option fits your standards best. The habit takes a little time to develop, but as it grows, you become more decisive and less regretful because you know you made the call for a real reason. You also get better at handling setbacks or criticism. Since your confidence comes from honest effort rather than applause, harsh words or challenges don't hit as hard. If the criticism matches the standards you set, use it to improve. If it doesn't, you can let it go and move forward. Either way, your energy goes toward improvement rather than resentment or self-doubt. Being the judge of your own progress is not about ignoring feedback, but about not letting every random opinion take over your outlook or motivation. This way of living keeps your focus on what really counts, and gradually you start to feel more at home in your own skin. The more you use your personal standards as a guide, the less time you spend worrying about the ever-changing opinions around you. You become someone others trust, not because you copy their blueprint, but because you stand for something specific and stick with it. Over time, friendships, work, and daily experiences feel more meaningful because you know you're there for the right reasons. There's this quiet satisfaction that settles when you set your own markers for how you're doing and give yourself credit where it's due. Sometimes you'll be swimming against the current, sometimes you'll find unexpected allies, and sometimes you'll have to update your benchmarks as you evolve. That whole process is yours to own. Marcus Aurelius spent a lifetime refining his standards, and even at the highest level of power, he reminded himself regularly to focus on internal measures rather than reputation or popular celebration. By grounding your sense of success and fulfillment in personal standards, you become more resilient, creative, and honest in your life. The urge to compare with everyone else becomes less urgent, replaced by a sense of curiosity about how far you can go, what you can learn, and who you can help along the way. Even setbacks turn into chances to refocus and realign, rather than reasons to spiral into worry or self-criticism. When you reflect honestly, set your targets, and make progress at your own pace, you find a freedom that's hard to trade for anything, and that can't be taken away by the changing opinion of the crowd. What naturally follows when you begin to measure your life and your success by your own standards is that you stop feeling so shaken by every little outcome. At first, this might feel unfamiliar, especially if you're used to holding your breath, waiting for a reaction or a specific result before you can relax. But Marcus Aurelius, through years of practicing what he wrote about, pointed to something that has become more and more important today: the idea of doing your part with care and attention, but not letting yourself become obsessed with the outcome. This mindset is called detachment from the outcome, and it gives your efforts a new kind of freedom. Instead of being glued to what happens after you act, you free up energy to focus on what you can really control, your intentions and your actions. Think about daily life. There are so many moments when you put your best foot forward, only to have things go differently from what you hoped. You might work really hard on a project at work, just for the team to change directions at the last minute. Or maybe you put energy into a relationship or a friendship, and the other person just isn't ready to meet you in the same way. If your happiness or your motivation is always attached to getting a certain reaction, life turns into a roller coaster. Highs are followed by lows, and you're always trying to chase after the next good response or run away from anything that could disappoint you. Marcus would say that the only thing you really own in those moments is your own effort. He would remind himself that it's impossible to guarantee what other people will do, what will catch on at work, or how the world will react. Even if you do everything right, sometimes the outcome is out of your hands. By choosing to focus on your own process, preparing well, being honest, giving your best, you create satisfaction that is steady, even when the result is unpredictable. This kind of detachment doesn't mean you stop caring or that outcomes are meaningless to you. You can be invested. You can want to do a great job, hope for recognition, or wish for things to go well. The point is, you learn to find satisfaction in knowing you did what you reasonably could, no matter what happens next. This is a lot more realistic and a lot more peaceful than believing you should always control how everything turns out. The reality is, you never fully do. Some people have the idea that if you let go of caring about the outcome, you'll stop trying or lose your drive. But in practice, detachment has the opposite effect. Because you're less scared of disappointment, you are willing to take more chances and put yourself out there. You can learn from mistakes and setbacks without getting stuck in self-doubt or regret. Let's say you enter a contest and do your best. If you win, that's great. If you don't, you know your value wasn't tied to the prize, but to the dedication and the integrity you brought to your entry. You keep moving, keep learning, and you lose that old paralysis that came from only trying when you were sure of a win. This philosophy also helps in relationships of all kinds. When you show up authentically, whether that's as a friend, a partner, or even just someone part of a team, you can give real effort and kindness without being crushed if you don't always get the same in return. Sometimes people are distracted, stressed, or just not ready for what you have to offer. Rather than closing yourself off or deciding to never try again, detachment lets you continue to offer your best, but stay emotionally steady, even if you experience disappointment. This makes your good actions less about earning points and more about living in a way that feels right to you. Detachment helps with letting go of perfectionism too. If you're waiting for the perfect time or result before you can celebrate your efforts, you're likely to miss out on a lot of good moments along the way. Life rarely hands out perfect endings. With detachment, the focus shifts to participation and growth. What did I learn this time? How did I improve? And would I make the same choice again? These are questions that keep you connected to what matters, rather than endlessly analyzing what was gained or lost in the final scoreboard. For people who deal with lots of pressure, especially those who are afraid of judgment, detachment can feel almost like a superpower. If you're able to acknowledge, I did my best here and that's what matters most, then criticism, rejection, or being overlooked loses its sting. Instead of getting defensive, you can ask whether the feedback is actually useful, or just let it go. You begin to view mistakes as feedback, not failure. There is less guilt and less fear of starting over, and that unlocks a surprising amount of creativity and resilience. This isn't just for big moments. Detachment also applies to everyday decisions. Maybe you cook dinner hoping everyone will love it, but the meal doesn't turn out quite as planned. You can laugh about it, learn and try again tomorrow without feeling crushed or embarrassed. Or maybe you have a tough conversation with a friend and it doesn't resolve everything perfectly. Detachment lets you rest in the fact that you spoke your truth, listened honestly, and can keep moving forward whether or not the outcome is perfect. These experiences add up to a life that feels more in your control, even if outcomes sometimes aren't. Let's get practical for a bit. What does it look like to actually practice detachment from the outcome? First, it starts with setting clear intentions before you act. Ask yourself why you're doing something. Am I being kind just for attention, or because that's what I believe in? Am I working hard because I want applause, or because being thorough matters to me? Then focus your attention on what's inside your power. Put in effort, prepare well, show up with honesty, and then, when the results come in, pause before labeling them as good or bad. When you get a result you hoped for, enjoy it, but don't cling to it. Celebrate, then keep going. On the other hand, when things don't go your way, let yourself feel disappointed, but don't make it mean you failed as a person. Instead of rerunning what-ifs in your head for days, or blaming yourself for factors you couldn't control, accept that you did what you could and move on to what's next. Over time, this habit becomes smoother. You spend less time in regret or anxiety, and more time putting your energy into new actions. Something that helps a lot is noticing the difference between feedback and your sense of worth. If someone likes your work, great. If not, that's fine too. You can take what's useful, learn something, and leave the rest behind. Your value doesn't rise or fall with every outcome or reaction. As Marcus would note, it's freeing to realize that nobody outside of you gets the power to decide how you feel about yourself, a truth that comes into clearer focus each time you remember to detach from the need to control what happens after you act. In competitive areas like sports, career, or the arts, detachment can be a game changer. Maybe you go into a match or performance wanting to win or impress, but the day doesn't go perfectly. Instead of spiraling, you regroup, reflect, and train for the next round. This takes a lot of stress out of ambition. You get braver about risking failure and more able to recognize small wins along the way. It's important to remember that practicing detachment isn't about refusing to care. It's about shifting where you put your care onto the preparation, the choices you make, and the way you show up, not onto prizes, likes, recognition, or guarantees. You focus on being better today than yesterday, showing up with integrity even when nobody is watching, and letting the results fall where they may. This way, even if circumstances change or plans don't go as expected, you don't lose your grounding. Detachment can also make you a better teammate, friend, or leader. When you are not ruled by fear of what will happen after you act, you're more likely to give honest feedback, try new ideas, and encourage others to do the same. You stop micromanaging or overthinking every step, which makes collaboration more relaxed and more creative. Others sense this and usually appreciate working with someone who tries hard, but is not overwhelmed by the need for everything to turn out perfectly. This practice improves your relationship with yourself too. You're less likely to criticize or shame yourself for normal ups and downs. Instead, you start to see life as a series of experiments, each one teaching you something or helping you grow, not a series of final judgments on your worth. You can look back at the end of a task or even a difficult week and say, I tried my best, and now I know more for next time. This reduces stress and raises your willingness to keep learning. Notice how detachment creates a buffer from regret and anxiety about the past or future. If you missed an opportunity or things fell apart, you review it, take what you can, and let it go. If you're anxious about a future project or relationship, you prepare as much as you can and accept that the outcome will be what it is. When your energy isn't siphoned off by every result, there's more of it left for actually living. Marcus Aurelius had to practice this kind of detachment under intense public scrutiny, and his writings show how he returned again and again to focusing on what he could do and letting go of what he could not. He didn't stop working hard just because he couldn't predict the future. He learned to enjoy a measure of calm even when his decisions played out very differently than he hoped. This is something that anybody can use. The more you focus on effort and process, the less you need life to follow a perfect script. You also start to notice that letting go of outcomes doesn't make you passive or careless. Instead, it gives you clarity. You measure your progress by whether you're learning, making an honest effort, and staying in tune with your values. If so, you count the day as a win, regardless of what happened around you. This, ironically, often leads to better actual results because you keep showing up and getting better, while others burn out chasing every win or losing motivation after a single loss. A side effect of this mindset is that you become more willing to try things that could fail. You might sign up to give a talk, apply for a job, start a creative project, or repair a relationship, even if you can't guarantee how it'll turn out. Every time you act without being hooked on a certain reaction, you expand your sense of freedom. Opportunities open up because you're not waiting for permission or certainty. You realize you can always handle the outcome, learn from it, and move ahead. As this becomes more normal, you see that disappointment isn't deadly, and success isn't everything. Both are passing, and life is a lot smoother when your self-image is based on your actions, not on whatever happens next. You are confident in your ability to act and adapt, and you trust that whatever comes, you'll figure out what to do. People around you will probably notice this shift. You might feel less shaken during stressful events, or more optimistic in the face of setbacks. Your relationships get steadier because your mood doesn't rise and fall with every little thing. The people you work and live with learn they can rely on you. Not because you're perfect or always right, but because you are consistent in effort and never controlled by random ups and downs. When you look back after a run of weeks, months, or years acting this way, the pattern is clear. Your big personal and work milestones might not always match what you hoped for, but you'll see growth in yourself that's more dependable than any single result. You can point to moments you showed up even when it was tough, changed course after a setback, and cared more about doing the work well than getting instant recognition. Marcus Aurelius's advice to detach from the outcome is about meeting the world as it is, messy, unpredictable, and full of things you can't fully schedule or guarantee. But within that unpredictability, you find steadiness by focusing on being the kind of person who acts with care and intention, learns as you go, and lets outcomes come and go without losing your sense of self. This approach to life brings a powerful kind of freedom. You get to be ambitious and hopeful, but you're not broken by defeat or addicted to approval. Each day is a chance to show up, give your best, and trust that whatever happens next, you have everything you need to handle it. That simplicity and peace are what Marcus practiced, and it's something anyone can start doing, one intentional step at a time. That kind of steady focus and detachment from the outcome is what finally opens the door to real freedom, the kind Marcus Aurelius believed was possible for anyone, no matter their circumstances. When you start building your life this way, little by little, something important begins to shift inside you. You are no longer so wound up about what other people think or about keeping up with every fleeting expectation. The constant pressure to perform, please, impress, and get it exactly right for everyone else begins to lose its grip. The approval or criticism that used to set the tone for your whole day suddenly matters a lot less. It becomes clearer that your happiness, your confidence, and even your sense of purpose are not things anyone else can give or take away from you. If you look closely at any group of people, friends, co-workers, neighbours, even celebrities, it's almost always true that the ones who feel the most comfortable in their own skin are those who do not spend their lives waiting for outside validation. You can spot it in the way someone talks, carries themselves, or reacts when things don't go their way. There is a reliability, a sense of groundedness, and often a quiet courage in people who simply live by their own values, adjust their actions as they learn, and move forward without obsessing over what everyone else is thinking. The more you practice these stoic habits, pausing to check your motivation, focusing on character rather than applause, learning from criticism without being crushed, setting standards that fit your real life, and letting go of what you cannot control, the easier it becomes to find that same sense of freedom in your own life. This kind of independence is not about cutting people off or becoming stubborn. In fact, it usually means your relationships get stronger and more honest. When you stop trying to manage how others see you, you talk in a plain way, and people can feel when you're being real. Conversations start to feel easier because you are not rehearsing your lines or worrying you'll slip up. You can share a win or admit a mistake without drama. If someone disagrees with you, you listen, consider it, and move on, which is a lot less stressful than trying to argue your way into being liked. Over time, the people who truly respect and care about you stick around, while the needier or more fickle relationships fade away. As for work or creative pursuits, the shift away from validation opens up enormous possibilities. When you are not waiting to be picked, to go viral, or to win a round of praise before you start something, you simply get to work. There is freedom in starting a new project, song, pitch, or hobby because you're interested or because it fits your values, not because you need a pat on the back. You also become much more resilient when things flop, change, or don't get noticed. Since your goal becomes honest effort and improvement instead of applause, every experience, success, or failure teaches you something. You can actually look forward to challenges rather than fear them, because feedback is information, not a verdict. It's often overlooked, but killing the need for validation can make you much more playful and creative. Instead of being trapped by safe choices or always asking, will people like this? You make room for experiments. Maybe you share a new perspective, mix different styles, or finally ask a tough question. When the outcome is not the most important thing, you become less self-conscious and more willing to test out fresh ideas, even if they're messy at first. The end result is growth, skill, and often a kind of joy that can't be faked. A lot of people lean into people-pleasing or perfectionism without realizing it's squeezing joy out of their daily routine. When you let go of validation as the main goal, it's as if you free up a bunch of mental energy that was always caught in planning, reviewing, or second-guessing. Now, instead of double-checking your every move, you put your focus into the project, task, or even just being present with friends or family. You notice you're less tired at the end of the day, and worries about your image or reputation don't bounce around in your head anymore. Life gets lighter, not because the world changes, but because you no longer let every little reaction run your mood. Another surprising benefit is that real independence makes you more open to feedback. When you are not treating every comment as a judgment of your worth, you listen for what is truly useful and let go of the rest. Criticism turns into a tool for learning, not something to defend yourself against. You become a person others feel comfortable being honest with because you do not fall apart or become defensive at the first sign of disagreement. In teams, friendships, and families, this kind of openness is rare, and the people around you notice and respect it. You end up with deeper relationships, more trust, and clarity instead of confusion. When your sense of self comes from your daily choices and not the applause of others, you also start recognizing good things about yourself that would be easy to miss if you only chased approval. Maybe you are steady in a crisis, generous with your time, honest even when it makes things awkward, or creative in solving problems. These quiet strengths grow over time, and you feel a kind of pride that is real but not boastful. Not having to broadcast every victory or explain every mistake makes you comfortable even when others are moving in loud, flashy ways. It's a foundation that stands even when a round of online attention, a job, a trend, or a friendship comes to an end. For a lot of people, the real breakthrough comes when they can finally say no, whether it's to extra work, an invitation that doesn't fit, or a pressure to act a certain way without carrying guilt for hours or days. When validation is no longer holding the steering wheel, it's easier to spot your actual priorities and say yes only when you really mean it. You start to trust your gut, act in ways that match your values, and find out what actually brings you energy rather than just a quick approval buzz. This confidence in your own decisions is what Stoics like Marcus Aurelius found central to all practical freedom. When you know what matters and you can focus your energy there, you become the kind of person who moves through life with intention. Even your daily routine changes. You stop wasting as much time replaying conversations or planning out how you'll respond to every imagined comment. You check your work, sure, but you're not obsessed with being perfect. If you drop the ball or miss a detail, you fix it, learn, and let it go. If someone else outshines you, you can appreciate their skills without feeling threatened or resentful. Your sense of competition turns from needing to win all the time to simply doing your best, improving at your own pace, and feeling content with your progress. Because you're less desperate for applause, you're also more willing to help others shine. You don't worry that their success takes away from your own identity. When you meet people who are insecure or caught up in validation cycles, you recognize where they're coming from, but you don't get pulled in. Sometimes your steady presence can even inspire friends, co-workers, or family members to loosen up, try new things, or be less harsh with themselves. Personal setbacks get handled differently too. Instead of spending days or weeks blaming yourself, hiding, or trying to win everyone's forgiveness or understanding, you figure out quicker what went wrong and take genuine steps to make it right. You move from apology to action in a clean way, not as an act to get forgiven, but because it feels right. You gain trust in your own resilience and ability to change, because you aren't waiting for the all clear from everyone around you before making progress again. If you struggle with decision-making, freedom from the need for validation clears out a lot of the clutter. When other people's opinions are not broadcast across every choice, you can listen to your own experience, review the facts, ask a couple of trusted people if needed, then act, adapting as you go. This speeds up your progress, leaves more space for trying new things, and reduces regret because you know what path you are actually trying to follow. This way of living means you also have more energy and attention for the things and people that matter most. You are more present at the dinner table, in conversations, on projects, and even in your downtime. When you're not busy replaying every social incident or wondering how something landed with someone else, you have room for gratitude and actual enjoyment. Life feels richer and more direct, and you have the patience to appreciate small things instead of always scanning for approval. If you consider how this changes how you face uncertain times, starting a new job, moving to a new city, building or ending a relationship, navigating illness or loss, the benefits become even more obvious. You approach transitions with less anxiety and more curiosity. You aren't frozen because you're waiting to see how it looks to everyone else. You're less afraid of starting from scratch, making mistakes, or having to recalibrate, and you can actually find meaning in the ups and downs because you trust your own footing. There's often a ripple effect. People who kill the need for outside validation are more willing to give back, take risks, and tackle problems that matter, because they aren't paralyzed by the fear of getting things wrong in front of an audience. You end up with more courage, not because you expect never to fail, but because you know you're strong enough to learn, adapt, and keep going. This is a more sustainable kind of bravery than just putting on a bold face for applause. Over time, you may notice that letting go of the need for validation doesn't mean you never get noticed or thanked. It just means these moments feel like a bonus rather than a requirement for happiness. If someone appreciates your work or presence, it feels genuine and satisfying. But if you don't get that nod, your day and your mood do not fall apart. You're still grounded, steady, and looking at the bigger picture. Gradually, you move from chasing applause or approval to sharing it, celebrating what's good with others, and finding real, grown-up satisfaction in the life you're quietly building. Marcus Aurelius once observed that real freedom is being able to live according to your own nature, shaped by reason and guided by honest purpose. He didn't mean ignoring others, but he did mean knowing what is yours to control and leaving the rest. If you carry this spirit into today's world, you'll notice the need for validation is just a distraction from the business of living a rich, meaningful life. Each time you resist the pull to perform for likes, please at all costs, or bend to fit every passing expectation, you grow your own sense of courage and integrity. Even when setbacks do come, you believe in your ability to start again, because your identity is not wrapped around a single plan or outcome. The ability to try, to fail, to succeed, to resolve, and to grow is yours. The approval or rejection from the outside is just background noise at that point, and life starts looking more open and less stressful. You realize that the space left behind by old anxieties is quickly filled with curiosity, genuine ambition, and peace. By adopting these Stoic ideas, you replace the fragile cycle of validation with something that lasts, a steady confidence rooted in action, honesty, and clarity. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth because you know it already, and you're not afraid to keep proving it through your choices. Each day becomes another chance to stand up, try things out, and see what actually happens. The pressure falls away, and in its place, you find the kind of freedom that makes every aspect of living, work, love, rest, play, deeper and more yours than ever before.